She was 53 years in Christian Science. She was raised in Christian Science Sunday School and no other Sunday school during her early years. She's held a vice president and a president position of the executive boards in different Christian Science churches. She is what's called class taught, which means only certain Christian scientists can have this what's called class instruction, which go into the supposedly deeper things of Christian Science, deeper than the deeper things they claim they have. And she's been on many committees in the church. The claim of most Christian scientists who listen to other ex-Christian scientists is, well, they never understood, remember, understood, it's intellectual, they never understood Christian Science to begin with. So what they say is they just try and wipe away whatever these people say. But Carolyn Poole did understand Christian Science as these other people that she'll tell you about tonight. After 53 years, if you don't understand Christian Science, then I would say that it's impossible to understand for anyone. She was a member of the Mother Church in Boston and in the branch church where she lived. She's had articles in Christian Life magazine, Christian Reader, Pentecostal Evangel, Moody Monthly. She's been on the radio in Boston, which is interesting because that's where the headquarters is of the Mother Church. She's been on KBRT radio. She's the director of a ministry called Christian Way, which is an outreach to Christian scientists. And she was also has a section in Dave Hunt's book, Cult Explosion, of which there is a film and a book that gives an overview of all the cults. And I'd like you to give a warm welcome to Carolyn Poole.
Oh, thank you. Jesus said, "Let not your heart be troubled. Believe in God, believe also in me." John 14:1. The first part of what he said to believe in comes easy for most of the world, to believe in God. Even the Indians believe in a pantheistic God. Even the agnostics concede there's probably a God. And most people will readily admit about God, but it is when they come to Jesus Christ that they're in trouble. Part of the world has not heard of him. And then among the world who has heard of Jesus, they are given another Jesus. This is what you've been learning on this series on the cults. In the United States today, there are strong ministries of ex-Jehovah Witnesses for Jesus, ex-Mormons for Jesus, and Jews for Jesus. But the only ex-Christian Scientists for Jesus that we know about is our own little group. We work under the name of Christian Way. Also, we are known under New Beginnings, which works under Dr. Walter Martin. Now, I hear from people from all over the United States. They either call me or write to me. And this is why I can say that we're probably the only ones doing this. And our little group can give our biggest thanks for getting started to no other than Todd. No, this is the way that came about. When I came out of Christian Science 5.5 years ago and had accepted Jesus as my Lord and my Master, I did not know of any other Christian Scientist who had ever done that, and yet I'd known them all of my life. And I prayed, I said, God, there has to be somebody else who's gone through this, who knows how I'm feeling. I heard of Dr. Walter Martin, and I went down there and told him I just left Christian Science, and he said, praise the Lord. He's a big, burly type man. He gave me a hug, and he said, come back Sunday and give your testimony. And I did. There were over 700 people. And that day I met a young man who came up to me afterwards, and we exchanged names and addresses. His name was Todd Enborg. About 10 months later, he wrote to me that he was starting a class on witnessing the Christian Scientists. And I believe that he has the distinction of teaching the only class which was just on that one cult. It lasted 10 weeks. And through him, I met Nancy Kind and the others that I'm still meeting with. We had meetings, and he came to them to the meetings before he moved away. So we do thank him. Now I'm going to go into my testimony, but before I do, I want to say what I'm always impressed that God wants me to say. Christian Scientists are beautiful people. I have nothing against any of them personally. I've known them all of my life. In my bedroom, there are some very nice oil paintings which were done by my Christian Science Sunday School teacher, Mrs. Carter. She's been dead for quite a few years. And I just hope that when I go and leave this world and get to be in heaven with Jesus, I hope she's there. But I don't think she would be there from what she learned in Christian Science. But that's part of what my testimony is. So now I want to ask you to take this journey in time with me. Hi. And we're going to go way back before I was even a baby like that. And we're going to go back to when my grandparents in 1909 joined the Christian Science Church. They lived in Lafayette, Indiana. And I have their papers, which is a miracle because my mother had to, through the Depression, move around a lot. And she wasn't able to keep family heirlooms, but she did keep those papers because they are signed by J.V. Dittemore, who is one of the well-known figures in the history of Christian Science. My mother became a Christian Scientist, of course, from them. And then she married my father, who was agnostic, and she had my brother. And then when she had me, and you'll hear a little Texas accent here, that's because I was born in Graham, Texas. My mother had a Christian Science practitioner when I was born. Now that's the person you call to pray. He was telling you a little bit about that. And according to my mother's story, she had a totally painless childbirth. She even had a supernatural experience. However, in Christian Science, you're not permitted to use the word supernatural because Mrs. Eddy claims that all of these things are not supernatural, they are natural. My mother saw, as she walked down the corridor of this little sanitarium where I was born, she saw supernaturally lit up the words, God is life. And the practitioner told my mother that because of the way I got started in this world, that I would be somebody very special with the Lord. I heard that as a child, and it didn't give me an ego trip because I didn't pay much attention to it. I was like all the other kids. I was really not that interested in religion. Only if I got sick or scared, then I turned to God, which meant turning to what I had been taught in Christian Science, to know the truth, to recognize that all sin, sickness, disease, and death are only a false claim. Now, I'm talking to you pure Christian Science talk here. That God is mind, His Spirit, and man is made in His image and likeness. Therefore, man is not material, he is spiritual. I have said these things so many hundreds of times in my life that I can still say them with my eyes shut and maybe backwards. We get on a subject of healing. We get into an almost controversial topic. I always say, Carolyn, don't get into it. But that is what Christian Science, it bases itself on to be the truth that it does work and they have healings. And they have these demonstrations, as they call them. So I grew up in that. It's the only Sunday school I ever went to. My parents divorced when I was 4 years old. And those were, as you can tell, well, I'm a grandmother. I don't tell my exact age, so I'm a grandmother. Grew up in a depression. And Mother had raised my brother and me alone, and she would spend many hours in the offices of Christian Science practitioners, and they would encourage her. Well, we're going to speed up time or we won't get to the present time. We moved to California while I was still in high school, just before I graduated from high school. And after I graduated, I met my husband, who was going to USC, and he later graduated in civil engineering. And he was not of any religion. And I thought, well, I was a Christian Scientist, and he said, well, that's fine. He had some relatives who were Christian Scientists, and he didn't care one way or the other. Then he went into the Air Force. We married in 1942. I should explain to you, in Texas, people marry very young. Because if you're like me, you're always being around somebody's age. And I was only 12 when I got married. And I promise you that's the only white lie I'll tell tonight. Okay, so we married, and he went overseas. And while he was over there, I wrote him letters telling him that I was praying for him and knowing the truth. Now, I didn't know that those letters were making him angry. Because when he came back, he said, what right did we have to think that just because he had a wife who could pray for him that he would be safe when all the other men were dying? Because he saw a lot of bad things there. Well, there was friction there, and it's a miracle we stayed married. I loved him, but we were just normal married people with our problems through the years. And he didn't like Christian Science, but I got deeper into it, especially when I became pregnant, because I was not used to going to doctors. And unlike many women who want children very badly, I like children, but I really was not domestically minded. And I was afraid of being pregnant. And when I went in for my first examination, I remember I cried hysterically because undergoing all that. So this drove me deeper into Christian Science at that time. I had a practitioner who knew the truth for me. Now, I did go to a regular doctor and hospital to have a baby. A lot of Christian Scientists go to special homes where they will have a medical doctor who believes in the things of Christian Science, or at least they're willing to go along with it, and they will not give the woman any anesthetic or anything for the pain. Well, I went the regular route, so I had someone praying for me. And I joined the church at that time, but then later, my husband and I got interested more in the world. We joined clubs, and we drank, and we smoked. Now, when you're a Christian Scientist, you cannot drink or smoke or go to doctors or take medicine. You really live a very life set apart. And I had gotten more into the world, and I didn't leave Christian Science because of anything that I saw wrong in it. It was just that my husband didn't like it, and he had told me, so, well, if you'll find a religion that isn't so kooky, I'll join it. But he didn't mean it, because we did look around a little bit, tried some different churches, but I realize now that we didn't go to any church that taught about Jesus. But let's, for the moment, not talk about Jesus. Let's leave him to the side. There were two things that I hated. At this time we were living in Long Beach. I hated the desert, and I hated small towns. And down in Long Beach, after my husband graduated from USC, I graduated from Long Beach State University. And where did my husband go to work? In a little town called Mojave. You probably haven't even heard of it. It was only 3,000 people if you looked under the rocks to count what's moving there. And the winds howled. Oh, it was a terrible place. And there was a small town in the desert. And after 2.5 years of his commuting back and forth, I knew I had to get a divorce and move there. So I did. I moved up there, and it was even worse than I thought it would be. Now, when I give his testimony, because he's still in business, and in fact, I've been invited to speak at the Four Square Gospel Church there in March. And when I give this, I always tell the people, now, forgive me, you know, that's the old Carolyn, because I do love them now, but I hated it then. And we had a mutual thing going between the people and myself. I didn't like them, and they didn't like me. But after some time of just really suffering under those circumstances, I was driven to go the only place I knew to go, and that was back to God. So I started getting my lesson each day as you're taught in Christian Science. I began getting the periodicals. Now, at this time, my daughters, we had 2 daughters, they were teenagers, and they were not living the kind of life, really, that I wanted them to live. The one girl would all she'd do was sit before the TV and put on weight and watch TV, and the other daughter had a spat with a boyfriend, and she downed a bottle of pills, and we had to rush her to the hospital to get her stomach pumped. And this was the kind of thing that, with my life not going right, and my husband's business had hit, he was in real estate and a land developer, had hit a place where he was making no sales, and we're living in a town I hated, and I just had reached a point I couldn't take it, and this friend of ours who was a Christian Scientist suggested that I turn to Christian Science, back to it. So I did. And things did begin to straighten out better. And with the daughters and with my husband's business began to prosper. And I got deeper into it, and I quit the worldly things. I quit smoking, I quit drinking, I quit going to doctors. And this is over a period of several years. I got deeper and deeper into it. But during this time, something happened, and that was to change her life. I still hated the desert, so one day I talked to my husband into letting us move back to Long Beach, and he would come down there on the weekends. So we did that, and the oldest girl had married, and I was living down there with the youngest daughter, and she was going to college for this time. And I read in the paper one day that Billy Graham was going to be at a crusade at the Anaheim Stadium. Oh, I had always heard of him, as everyone has, and I was curious about him because he was famous. And I thought, well, someday I'm going to be a grandmother, and I want my grandchildren to know that I have seen Billy Graham. So I asked my daughter to go with me, and she was too busy at schoolwork, and I went by myself. And I cannot remember what he said as I sat up there, and there were thousands of people there. But something that he said caused people to stand up and walk down below, and I did that. And I went down below, and I remember standing close to him. I could see the pancake makeup on him for, the TV cameras. And I was very embarrassed because I thought, oh, I hope nobody sees me here, because I really didn't know why I was there. And then after I went and sat back down, after somebody had come and taken my name and address, and I sat back down, I had something happen to me that's never happened to me before or since. An evil presence came to me. I couldn't see it, but I could feel it. It was like some black swirling mass standing right beside me, and it gave me a message inside of me. It told me that something bad was going to happen to me that night, and I'd be dead before the night was over. I went into a panic. I started praying as I knew doing Christian Science, and I was always a great one to read and memorize parts of the Bible. I said the 91st Psalm and the Lord's Prayer, and I thought, what's wrong, God? And I thought, I know, I'm a Christian Scientist, I've been disloyal being here, I shouldn't be here. So I said, God, forgive me, I'll never come here again. And that thing left me. And on the way home, in analyzing it out, I said, I know what it is. It's Billy Graham. There's something wrong with him, because he has to be evil, or this kind of thing wouldn't happen to someone coming to hear him. So I've never had any more to do with him. Well, it was right after that time that my husband got the big bright idea of building a golf course out in the desert in the town of Mojave. He had other people who had a lot of money that went in with him. He had already owned the land where we were going to put it. And from the very beginning, it was a mistake. And things got so bad financially for us that we had to sell that house, and I moved up back to the town of Mojave, the town I hated so much. And the first summer that the golf course was open, I had to work in a clubhouse, pro shop, and I had never even been in a pro shop before then. In fact, I hadn't worked in a number of years. And it was 12 hours a day, and the only way I could go to work was to pray myself out to that job. And I went to the Christian Science practitioner. I went to 3 different Christian Science practitioners as time went on. You only had to go to one at a time, but I changed and went to them, and she kept saying to me what she had always told me when I'd never get sick and I'd go to her or have some problem. She said, you should join the church. See, I had not joined the church because I really didn't enjoy their church. At least at that point I didn't. So I thought, she's right. So I joined the Mother Church and the Branch Church, started going every Sunday, and a strange thing happened in our home. My husband, who always disliked Christian Science, started going with me. And I even saw a change in him, because he had gotten extremely nervous at the time we were having so much trouble with that golf course. In fact, he was difficult to live with. But he's a wonderful person. I don't mean to be running down here, but this was what he was going through business-wise. And after he started going to church with me, he calmed down. And he has different business ventures, and one of his partners, a Jewish man, told him several years later, said, you know, we saw a difference in you back there. We don't know what it was. And he came and told me, well, I knew what it was, or it was because he had God. So I thought, so I devoted all my life into the Christian Science work, and our business did improve. Some miracles happened there, but it would take too long to go into what all happened on that golf course. And during this time, I started working in all the committees, different committees in the church. And I just felt that I love Christian Science. I was going to stay in it for the rest of my life. I'd never leave it, because it was a great peace there. I felt it was a spiritual understanding that was an interpretation of the Bible. And what we believe, he's been telling you what we believe, so I won't go into all that. I'll just add to it this one thing here. We believe, since that all is mind, that everything's a result of your thinking, and false beliefs, things are bad, it comes from erroneous thinking. And I thought that people like Billy Graham, and if I'd been here and met you people who are no Bible students, this Christian church, I would have admired you and respected you, but I would have felt that you had not come to that full understanding of the unreality of matter, that all is fine, and that you would, if you didn't have it now, you would understand it someday after you left this belief of this body. Well, all this time I was trying to study the Bible, and I did recognize that we did not read all the Bible. We just read a part here, a verse here, and a verse there. And since I had a college degree and I liked to read, and I knew that the Bible was the first book that was printed when the printing press was invented, and that it's been the most influential book in the world, I thought it was wrong that I had not read it all the way through.